Okay, let me share my screen. So yeah, where we are with the design sprint and what this sprint is about. First of all, I won't go through all the details, just very quickly at the very beginning. We collected challenges around the current Auto DevOps offering. Some of them are related really to Auto DevOps. Some of them are more related to I would say, our current pipelines or even the experience around pipelines. So it might be interesting to you, Dov. And then we decided where we want to focus on. And the long-term goal in the end became this one, that in 2 years' time, Auto DevOps is used in 75% of new projects without the development teams realizing that they are using it. Each Auto DevOps setup constantly follows best practices for DevOps that someone defined using a set of official and community-built components. I'm going to break this down a bit because there are many, many interesting pieces. One is that development teams realizing don't even realize they use it, which means it's a core offering within GitLab. So it's not a special name, it's not a special feature, but basically that's, I would call it that this is the main approach to automation within GitLab. The other thing is that this best practice is set up by someone. It could be a software engineer at the project level, but it could be as well a platform engineer at the group level who sets up these best practices. And there are official and community-built components that they can use to build out these pipelines. So this is the target where we would like to get the goal of Auto DevOps as we described it. And you can already see here that it's really closely related to a pipeline definition, not necessarily authoring, but how we define pipelines. And then I think we even missed this part. Kind of, yeah. The biggest challenges we see. How can we do things? I think a very, very useful part was the lightning demos, and I would more like just recommend watching them if you have some time. Here, everybody collected their own insights with respect to existing solutions in the area of this goal that I just read. And then we moved on to coming up with a concept idea, and from that to describe some test flows that we want to do. I might go back to the concepts first, but where we are right now is we are at the end of the user test flows, and that's the beginning of the storyboarding. In terms of the concepts, the chosen concept was this one, which basically says that either at the start of the project or once your project is already there, you can click a button to set up deployments, which provides some wizard-like experience. Here it says that the Docker file is found and you can still add some database. But actually this wizard generates code, and that code is stored in your project, under your project somewhere. And there might be even group level pipeline or definition of this workflow that can just be customized at the project level, or it can be restricted or enabled at the project level. So like here's the security linter, which cannot be overwritten, and then there is a database which can be accessed by project one. And then deployments are triggered on various events. So that was the main concept. Many of the concepts were around similar lines. To give you an idea, actually, my favorite description was this, which just said that from the developer's point of view, it's a black box. Ops defines a platform. There is no CI at all. But from the platform's definitions point of view, there is a properly coded and easy to and kind of easy to reason about definition of the pipeline. And then the dev just pushes the code, and there is still some kind of possibility of choosing what is actually being run, and there might be a level of machine learning around that. So I think this is the basic idea, what's described here by Tong, but the other one I found it goes into more detail and is easier for us to reason about on the longer term. And another aspect that I decided to carry on was, I think it actually, this was from Nadia, my guess, that is, it is to have group level infrastructure dashboard or some kind of dashboard around all these pipelines, where we can see if projects are compliant with the DevOps standards we have, and we can manage group level templates and edit all the group level settings there. So this was the concept, and then we came up with user test flows. These were basically kind of workflows from what we want to go through. And the one that was chosen, I will stay with this because Nadia did many things. Oh no, I cannot. Okay, I will try to summarize it. Or Nadia, I would leave it now for you because you added so many things here that it's hard for me to summarize the previous.
Sure, yeah, I'll share my screen.
And then, yeah. Dov, do you have any questions until now? Something you would like to get into more detail, or?
No, I think it's clear for now. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's definitely still lots of gaps in the storyboard, but I'll just go over the things that I highlighted, the different steps. So I'm looking at a situation where there's a group. So an admin first creates a group for the organization, and then they create different projects in that group. So once time comes, an admin creates a new project in that group, and by default, Auto DevOps will be turned on for that project. That will just be the default setting. And the user could maybe choose to set it up later if they know they don't want that, but by default it would be selected. Actually, I'm not sure if we should allow to just like completely discard it. Maybe we want it to be on by default and you would have to go to settings to turn it off, but I thought it's good to kind of give that option. And maybe at the same time in the organization, some other projects are created. So maybe there's a security and compliance team that also sets up some workflows, and they could set up compliance pipelines, for instance. So that would be already set up for that project. So they would get some basic Auto DevOps features that we know can work by default without any additional input from the user, or perhaps something that we can just infer from the content of their project. And they might also get something that is set up on the group level or not. So once the repo is set up, whoever is responsible for setting up automated workflows in the organization, they go to the dashboard, this mystical place. I try to think what it could be. So my vision kind of for this dashboard is that it would be one single place for everything related to pipeline configuration. So everything related to pipelines and automation, like workflow automation, it would be accessible from that one place. And if you have Auto DevOps enabled by default, when you land on this page for the first time, and I kind of thought that maybe we could have this like automation section or something, and then it would kind of cover both CI/CD and Auto DevOps, or whatever it ends up looking like. Maybe it will merge, like in your meeting with Mikhail, you touched upon it a little bit. So you would see the Auto DevOps pipeline there, and you would be able to configure it further. If not, there would be some kind of empty state, and maybe you would get an option. Hey, do you want to enable Auto DevOps? And this is what it does for you. Or do you want to set up some like a custom pipeline, whatever? Do you want to use GitLab CI? And you could proceed from there. I have no idea if it can work this way, but this is kind of the idea.
I would have a question here. Or shall I ask my questions once you are over? Let me ask you at the end.
yeah, just I will try to kind of quickly go through things, and then yeah, we can discuss. So yeah, so you go to this place, and there, because you already have Auto DevOps enabled, you would be you will see what is set up, and you will see what is available, but requires your input to set up. So maybe there would be some kind of progress indicator saying that, hey, you already have all of those things set up, and then you can also set up like a deployment or security jobs and whatnot. And perhaps you would also get a visualization of the jobs that are already there, and then a way to set it up. But whatever, like, it doesn't really matter how it looks. But and yeah, just I pasted some screenshots here from Maria, I guess, to give some more context, like where this idea came from. Because right now, what we're doing on at Pipeline Authoring with the pipeline editor, we are creating a place for like someone from the platform team or a DevOps engineer to go there and to manage their pipeline configuration. So that's where they can see all of their pipeline architecture, and we will be adding more and more features that make it easier. So now you can see, you can view your merged YAML with all of the includes, and there's the linter and whatnot. So if we see Auto DevOps and CI as like, it's another question that Auto DevOps and CI are competing products within GitLab. So I feel like it's kind of
I have a solution for that.
That's great. Because it's important. Yeah. So basically, my idea is to have the single place where Auto DevOps and CI, in some magic way, are able to coexist and complement each other in a way. So yeah, some questions here, like what happens with the compliance pipeline when Auto DevOps is enabled? How do they interact? Because this feature already exists, and it's a CI pipeline, like a compliance CI pipeline that just gets merged with your CI YAML. And yeah, the competition between Auto DevOps and CI. So yeah, so you see what is already enabled here, and then you want to set up your workflow further, and you would be able to just click set up workflow, or set up set up a specific deployment, for example. And that triggers this wizard workflow where you just get a model that pops up and asks you for whatever inputs that are necessary. Maybe first you would choose a workflow type, and then yeah, you just answer different questions. Yeah, so actually, I don't know if this is like the next step, but someone else added this, that workflow builder generates the Auto DevOps YAML code. Oh, in the editor, yeah. So then you can customize the workflow. So it would open up the editor, and these would be kind of in the same place. So you would be able to see the graph, to see what's enabled, and then also access the editor from the same page. Kind of like now we have in the pipeline editor, we have the text editor, and we have a visualization that is now static, but in the future, maybe you could also interact with it. And next step, so you would customize the workflow in the editor, and then you can commit to main branch and just see the pipeline run from that same dashboard, or you might commit the changes to a new branch and open NMR, and that kind of, it's a bit of a different workflow, but that's probably what will happen most of the time. Like you create an NMR to review, and there we would have to show the pipeline in like the mini pipeline graph and whatnot. So the pipeline that runs, it should be tracked kind of in GitLab UI the same way that CI pipeline is tracked. So from the user experience point of view, like once the pipeline runs, the Auto DevOps pipeline is just a pipeline. So we should treat it the same way. So I just added this here, that you would be able to go to like the pipelines page and view the pipeline there, and so on. And then, yeah, changes to the pipeline configuration are merged to the main branch, and the code is generated in the Auto DevOps folder in their project. And that was kind of as far as I got.
Yeah, could you go back to the automation menu? Because I think that's where we we can get rid of the competition between CI and Auto DevOps as well. And the core question is, which is that what we speak about here is really just automation. And I think historically we approach it from the point of view of CI, because that's what exists at GitLab for a long time, and that's what is at the core of GitLab. But the topic is just automation. And when we speak about Auto DevOps, that's just an aspect of automation as well. And the question we should answer here is, it's very interesting how you speak about pipelines, that there is a compliance pipeline, there's an Auto DevOps pipeline, there's a CI pipeline. So these are kind of like just pipelines in parallel. Instead of starting a single pipeline, it seems that we are starting multiple pipelines actually. That's or defining multiple pipelines. That's how we speak about it even. And given my focus at Configure, I'm approaching this whole topic from the CD point of view. And I see the limitations of the directed acyclic graphs there. And that's where many tensions actually come up, because we try to build out deployment solutions. But actually what we speak about is automation. And when we look at it, it's that we need the runners, and I want to provide a task to the runner given some kind of workflow. That's it. And in this regard, there is no competition between anything that we speak about, because it's just about how we want to automate and we want to use these tools. And just, I think that's the only thing we have to just accept. And one question I would have for us here is that I would recommend to kind of set a scope for this automation to be able to create the storyboard. I would definitely leave out the overall GitLab automation, like what to do when a comment is added to an issue. So we have to have a smaller scope. I think having only CI would be too small. So I would recommend to have a scope what you described as well, like having compliance, deployments, and CI, and that's the scope. This is what you described as well. And then really we just having this, that all of this around automation, we have to define the workflows. There might be parallel pipelines we don't know yet, but based on how we speak about them, that's what we actually do.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. So basically, we have this umbrella term automation at GitLab, and then compliance, CI, and deployments are just different products, kind of, or different tools that we offer to achieve those things.
Yeah, on top of the automation, because all of these actually use runner. And today we have the API for this automation is GitLab CI, the YAML definition. And I think that's, in a large sense, that should remain, I would say. But even as the security team does, they kind of circumvent it by creating the compliance pipelines. I can imagine that we would do something similar with deployments. Actually, I don't want to do something. I don't want to avoid them, but I see the limitations of the current CI, YAML syntax and things.
Yeah, I mean, I agree about your comment about the limitation of YAML, but I would also look at that in the perspective of, maybe it's a bit different than what we just discussed. Maybe not, but like a pipeline is a pipeline, and it doesn't matter if it's like an Auto DevOps, if it's CI, if it's even CD. And so like there are different flavors of pipelines. So a lot of the features or solutions that we are building for CI will be relevant for Auto DevOps, for compliance, for CD. So I think we should make sure that the experience for the user, like regardless if they are following the Auto DevOps track or following CI their own CI would be kind of similar. Maybe there will be some nuance, some things will not work out of the box or will not work at all. And when we are choosing like one track, like for instance, I can give an example. We have the pipeline editor. And as Nadia mentioned, it has like the visualization, the link, the view merge YAML, and the edit. So maybe like if I'm a user that and I enable Auto DevOps, I won't be able to edit the pipeline, or maybe not right away, but I should be able to visualize it, see how it looks, see even the linter, see even the view merged YAML without the ability to look at it. And obviously, when you go to the pipelines, when you go to the job, you should see the same. You see the same view, maybe with different label, like this is Auto DevOps, and this is why certain amount of features will not work. But in terms of like the user experience, I do see us like more or less following the same path. And I think it's important that we need to be cognitive of the fact that there are different flavors. And every time we develop a solution, we need to think about, okay, what happened in the case of, Auto DevOps? What happened in the case of compliance? Every time we develop a feature, either it's from config or for pipeline or thing. I think we actually start doing that. Like for instance, in the empty page, in the pipeline editor, we already start talking about, okay, what happened if you have Auto DevOps, okay? So I think this is something that we start asking, like every time that we are building features into our solutions.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, same. Full agreement. So regarding the storyboard, for me personally, my most glaring gap in understanding of how it all will work is the technical implementation, because from the discussions that I listened to that you had with Mikhail, it seems like there's kind of like we're not fully agreed on what path to follow there. So maybe Viktor, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, basically what I'm going to share with you now is what I came up at today. So it's I haven't discussed this specific aspect with Mikhail. That's in the link that I shared with you over Slack. The idea is that, so Mikhail came up with a proposal for automatable DevOps that proposes a domain-specific language. But actually what it would do is, from an imperative code, that is the domain-specific language, we generate a declarative code. And the declarative code is passed to the pipeline. So that's the pipeline definition in the end.
So that's YAML.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is the interesting part. The current CI syntax is not purely declarative. So it's a mixture of declarative and imperative, but this is just a minor detail. We are not that far away from what we have today. Just think about that his idea is to create something very similar to what we have already today. And then we pass that YAML to the runner that this is my pipeline, run the jobs. But he has another hidden argument, and actually from my point of view, that's the most important argument, which is that the current approach to pipeline, that they are directed acyclic graphs, is not good enough for deployment pipelines, because dogs cannot have loops. That's why they are acyclic. So it's by definition. And in the case of deployments, you often want loops. You want to have retries. You want to have timeout conditions, and then a separate pipeline should be started when a deployment times out. So you need a more general modeling idea. And he found Petri-nets for that. To give you, if you are not familiar with Petri-nets, I was not a week ago. Just think about direct acyclic graphs without acyclic. So kind of any kind of graph, just that they are well-defined graphs. So they have a beginning and an end, and that's it. This is what he found. And the other thing I know that often for complex workflows is used, then you cannot model them as a graph, but you have just an evented system with an event queue where you broadcast the messages and then you have listeners who pick up the jobs. So this is a totally different approach to what we have today, but these are basically two approaches for very complex workflows. And I think that for us, the PatternNet approach would be great, because there we can use the whole integrated experience of GitLab. And the only thing is that we have to move away from the acyclic graphs that we have today. I mean, not move away, but extend to support PatternNets, not just acyclic graphs. And I think this is the main discussion that we have actually with Mikhail, how to model deployment workflows. And besides this, from it's a user experience, but really the next question is that what will that YAML look like? Whether it's purely declarative YAML, as Mikhail imagines it, with a DSL that generates that YAML, or it's a mixture that we have today, which I would recommend to change because it won't scale well on the longer term. But that's an implementation detail, I would say. So that's the discussion about with Mikhail. A third aspect of this discussion is that we want to have well-defined entities in terms of something that our favorite user, Marsha Cottrell from NASA, pointed out. If we would have, for example, cryptographically signed artifacts, that would be a huge win for them, because then they can become compliant with the most recent regulatory requirements in the US. But that's really kind of a minor detail, and it's how we define the entities.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's all. So I think the only thing here is that, okay, we want to define very complex workflows somehow, which is not possible today in GitLab CI.
So I'm less familiar with the PatternNet. I'm just trying to read this through.
Seriously, for this discussion, I think it's enough to know that it's not acyclic, so there might be cycles. And
yeah, I got it. I just wonder, like I'm very hesitant on like adding yet another way of processing our pipeline. Like having stage and having DAG has like a lot of implication for our users and a lot of complexity. And just like adding another one will be an extra layer.
I agree. Here, on the other hand, I can tell you one thing, which is that if we want to become a solution for deployments, then we will have to have a workflow engine that supports that. I see three options, three outcomes. One is that we will not do deployments, which would be kind of weird given GitLab's vision. And the other are the two ways that I'm aware of how this can be done. One is the event-based and the other is the PatternNet-based workflows. So I would say that we don't really have a choice here. The only choice is that we won't do it. Yeah,
I agree. I'm just thinking maybe there is like another option. Maybe there is a way for us to, or maybe not. Yeah, I'm just brainstorming here. I mean, I assume that we want our pipelines to be more dynamic. And in certain condition, we'll do X amount of action, and other condition we'll do other. And I mean, as I mentioned, we need to dive into that more, but I just wonder, like, if there is a way for us to introduce a more dynamic pipeline in order to support the deployment. Maybe not, but I'm just I need to ask this question. Like,
it might be that the thing is, I'm not sure if we are speaking today about the about the design sprint or something different. But what I would say here is that it might happen that we would, so even forgetting about Petri nets and all of that, and just thinking about the stages and the DAG approach to GitLab CI, it might be that it could be better to have two alternative products as GitLab CI, and at the beginning you have to say that this is something like a kind variable that says that this is a stages kind, and then it follows just that syntax, or this is a DAG style, and then it just follows that syntax. And because what we do today, as you said, we just mix things in there, and it seems like a huge chaos, actually. At least to me, I'm a pretty heavy user of GitLab CI because I try to leverage it as much as possible, and I'm always lost by the many features there are. And probably just by simply saying that you either use stages or DAGs, it could be a lot simpler, actually. And then there could be a third kind, which is the event based or whatever.
Either that, or like it will be like a new versioning of YAML. I know this is something that is been going around about, like, this idea is out there for like a couple of years. We still didn't find like the right justification of why we should maintain like two types of versioning of YAML or CI. Maybe this will be like the case where we say, okay, if you want like,
we do now.
Yeah.
So we already maintain two types because we support both stages and DAGs.
Yeah, but we are mixing them.
Yes. So it's extremely confusing.
Yes and no. I mean, it is confusing, but still, it's still manageable. It's still manageable. I would say like to add another one will probably be, will be an overhead, but it's still manageable because, like I see it from our users, they are mixing it, and we are trying to. I think we reached the limit on how we can solve the problem for them with like the last view that we've added, and I think that's as much as we can go. I mean, we can add some more enhancement, but.
The other thing that came up yesterday, and no, not yesterday, in the past few days, many times, is actually the dynamically generated child pipelines. That came up as a very interesting feature and a very powerful one. Where
that's what I was thinking. Like this along with like, there is also one additional feature that I know something that our user want is like conditional includes. So you can like add different pipeline based on different rules they based. So like if you extend it, it will be more dynamic. So dynamic child pipeline and conditional include will probably provide you with the flexibility to do like, and then it's just my hypothesis. We need to confirm that, but I think it could provide like the flexibility that our user would like to have. But then again, it's a complexity. It's just it's an added complexity.
Yeah.
For me, from the user experience point of view, having 3 ways to like architecture pipeline, I'm actually not too bothered by it, as long as we have a clear definition of like what we recommend this for. So if we can provide those 3 options, I actually quite like this idea that you mentioned, Viktor, just having some way to like toggle, or it's like you're in this mode now, you're in that mode now, and we just need to make it clear what this mode is for. So like a stage pipeline, this is like a simple solution. If you're just for the first time setting up some kind of automation for your project, and you don't have a very big project, maybe that's the way to go.
Actually, another thing that Dov mentioned is that it might happen that at least at the beginning, not everything is supported by a kind of a more advanced pipeline. Is that I think that's what we should do, because it would be just foolish to ignore the existing work that was already done around GitLab pipelines. And so we just have to build up on that. That's pretty clear to me. The only thing is that, for example, it might be really hard to visualize a Petri net, because you might have loops there. The actual Petri net, the actual path that you are traversing is not well defined at the beginning, because it will depend on the output of a given step. If you time out, you go this path. If you don't time out, you go that path. So that's why it's a tricky one. But at the same time, we can always, in the case of Petri nets, we can always generate the full YAML definition of that pipeline before the job would be run. So that part, for example, is totally feasible. Okay, shall we focus on storyboarding?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. So, yeah, how should we go about it?
Yeah. The thing is, I don't know how much in detail we should go with the codified configuration of Auto DevOps. Like, should we have specific code samples, or that's not needed?
For the prototype, you mean?
Yeah, let me share my screen, because then I can show what I'm. Yeah, for prototype, for sure, we have something like that. So I think that these first things are I would say okay. I would say here as well what you said, that it's enabled by default, and the best is that you can opt out from Auto DevOps. But that's what we should do, what you just described. We might even say that there are here as well, that there are some group level pipelines defined for you already, or something like that, like a compliance pipeline. I really like the automation idea. My first question when I saw this was that, what does it show at the group level? Because you spoke mostly about the project level, and I think we will have to figure out as well the group level one. This was. Yeah, so I think we shouldn't compete, as we already discussed now. Auto DevOps should be jobs in a pipeline, and we should use the same, let's say, final YAML syntax that GitLab CI uses as well. It might be a more extended syntax or something, but we have to be aligned here and really work together. So that's why I don't think that this is a question. And how would the compliance pipeline work with Auto DevOps? This was one of the reasons why I had this idea that we are actually saying that there are multiple pipelines in parallel, and we shouldn't aim for a single pipeline, and then it might be just a solved question.
Yeah, but how currently compliance pipeline works with GitLab CI.yaml is it gets merged and it takes precedence over whatever is defined in your GitLab CI.yaml. So I think it runs as one pipeline.
Could you give me a bit more detail here? Like what does it mean that it takes precedence? That if I have the same job name, then my job name is ignored and only the compliance one? That's exactly what it means?
Exactly.
Okay.
But it runs before, like it runs before your pipeline. So it's
the beginning.
It like runs at the beginning, but as you mentioned, if there will be like job carrying the same name, the first job will take precedence now.
The compliance job would take
Which is the compliance one. This is by default.
Okay. Here actually, Mikhail, I think, has a very, very interesting idea for compliance requirements, which is that if we have signed artifacts, then compliance would just mean that you have to have a signed artifact that proves that you run your compliance job. And the compliance pipeline just checks if there is an artifact in your pipeline that satisfies the compliance requirements. And it doesn't check what job was run to generate that. And in this respect, the single developer is enabled in the project level to switch to a different compliance backend if they want to, as long as they can provide the signed artifact. That was his idea, but this is a very different topic again. Okay, so basically there's a single pipeline just in that case. I think this is again, the question here is like, what is the scope of Auto DevOps? Because today Auto DevOps is your single pipeline that does everything for you. And this is where the problems actually start for Auto DevOps often. That for many teams, the development team is responsible to generate the container. And once the container is generated, another team is responsible to make sure that that container will be deployed. And this is kind of how the responsibilities are set up around the team. And with Auto DevOps pipelines, we just say that the development team is responsible for everything from beginning to the end. And the thing is that they don't know how to do the end. They know how to generate a container, but they have no idea about the deployment aspect of it. Which could mean that the deployment is very similar to the compliance pipeline, just run at the end of your pipeline. I don't know if you could follow me because I figured it out as I spoke.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. And from my discussions with Daniel, the product designer from the release team, we were talking about manual approvals for deployment jobs, and from like how we talked about the different personas, it did seem like the workflow is similar to compliance.
By the way, this is something we can actually leverage an existing feature. And I remember that, like, if I remember correctly, the best practice for the compliance pipeline is to run it on the pre-stage, which always come at the beginning.
Yeah.
And there is also a post stage, which is always come at the end. So we can say that, like, sorry?
Go ahead.
So we can say that, like, as compliance come in the pre, the deployment needs to come on the post.
Yeah. I have some questions here. I know about so that am I allowed to start child pipelines in the post stage?
I don't think so. If I remember correctly, I don't know, we need to check it. I think not, but like, don't take it for granted. I think that we need to ask someone from the backend this question.
Because this could be interesting then, that because if we can do that, then we can say that group level deployment pipeline is added at the very end and runs in whatever way it's set up. And then Auto DevOps is basically just this combination of the pre defined at the group level, the project level, REST, and the post defined at the group level. And post can be overwritten because that's not about compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can stay with a single pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay, let me move on here. So in that case, if we can solve for that, then I think we are good here. Yeah, here, like Nadia, where is this setup workflows button?
So, I mean, it can be called whatever. Setup workflow, actually, there's no button. I don't know. I just made it up after I made the sketch. So the idea here is that you can trigger a wizard by just clicking on the UI, like set up a deployment or set up a job, or hopefully we will be able to give like some suggestions. So someone who's completely new and doesn't really know what is available, so they would see some options in the UI. Or maybe there will be a generic button, set up a workflow, and then that prompts a wizard where you can choose what kind of workflow. So if you scroll to the next section of the storyboard, so you would be able to choose the workflow type, for instance. So all of that is just basically giving some kind of inputs to the form, to the questions that we ask, just getting the necessary information for us to set everything up in the background.
Okay, I would have one question still to the dashboard, is that, do we know the functionalities that a dashboard, that a pipeline has to fulfill? What you have here, compliance, security, deployment, integration. Is it always just these four, or is there, so like can we give names to different parts of a pipeline, and is it a finite set of names that are available, or should we, or you are not aware of this, that how could we name them?
Yeah, so these were sort of placeholders, but I also, it's a bit confusing because in the sketch it says that compliance is not set up, but we're imagining for the sake of the user flow that it is actually set up on the group level. But for a project that doesn't have it set up, maybe there would be an option. So if it's, if nothing is set up on the group level, maybe you would, okay, that's probably not relevant. Forget compliance set up on project level.
The reason why I'm asking is more, I got it that these are more like placeholders, but it's really, I think it's a very important thing that if we can, that the idea here is that we show some kind of a clue to the user that you can use the pipeline for compliance, you can use the pipeline for integration, you can use the pipeline for deployment. At least this was the message to me on this. And the question is that, could it happen that the user checked all these and they still see that their pipeline does not cover their requirements? I don't know, do you see what I'm getting to?
Yeah. So the idea here in this mockup, the idea would be that you would click customize, and then that would take you to the editor that shows you whatever you currently have in the YAML, and then you would be able to just put whatever you want in it. So if you know what you want and the UI doesn't give you that option, there would be an option to just set up whatever you want. And the options that we do provide, they have to be based probably on some kind of research. Like we need to figure out what are the top things that whoever is setting up the project would be interested in for their pipeline. And also, I guess, so like setting up an integration, setting up a compliance, these are again kind of different buckets of workflows that someone would be able to set up.
Yeah, okay, I'm starting to understand. Yeah, in that case, what I would recommend having here is just a minor modification, which would be that even when I already set up a compliance, it would stay here and it would just become green. And deployment would be still red because there is no deployment set up. And I can even say that actually I have it set up just not here, so I can just switch it to green. And then we get kind of this idea that was discussed from time to time within GitLab, that kind of DevOps score or something like that. And then your pipeline gets 100% because you just checked everything is green.
Yeah, that's exactly along the lines of what I was thinking. And these buttons, the concept is actually borrowed from the repo page, where there's like a button to create a README. And then once you create the README, you have that button that can open the README. So the concept is similar here.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on, because then I see as well the connection with this. Then if they click deployment, we can just provide them options for the pre-built deployment related workflows.
Just for the sake of the recording, I did run a quick experiment, and the pre is supported with branch. So you can set up a child pipeline and have jobs in the pre stage running.
Yeah, but the question is the post one.
I think if the pre is working, then the post is also. I can quickly check.
Oh, we can do it later as well.
Yeah.
Actually. Or we can set up the jobs in the press stage to be run in the post stage as deployment jobs. That's an option as well. The other question is post run in case of failure as well?
No, I don't think so. I mean, whenever a failed pipeline, there's a failed pipeline then. But you can, I guess you can add a condition for a job to run when it fails. So not the stage, but the job. Like on failure.
I see. Yeah. Or that's anyway, it will be probably a minor extension to the CI to say a dot error or dot failure stage, which runs only if the pipeline failed.
There is, I think there are jobs that you can run on failure. So you can have like maybe a dedicated job that will run only when the pipeline fails. This is something that is supported today.
Yeah. So, okay, then here I think one interesting thing is this community contributed workflows. I think this is pretty much in line with your thinking around the job templates.
Yeah.
As a result, I think you have much more insights here than I do.
Yeah. So, do you want us to talk a little bit about the vision for templates, or should we move on with the storyboard?
Both the vision and kind of the current status, because like if we want to provide a prototype, like can we build on something you have already as a prototype?
So I'm working on it. This milestone probably will carry over to the next milestone that work, but currently Dov and I are doing some more problem validation with large customers to better understand their specific workflow, how they manage template libraries at the enterprise level, because it's a very important feature. Like a lot of larger organizations have a need for that, and how we handle that will definitely affect how we handle GitLab templates and community contributed templates. So the user experience that we provide, it should be kind of the same for all of them. It's just going to be like different types of templates. And in terms of implementation, there are like different ideas. Dov can probably talk a bit more about that. Like there was even an idea to use package registries for template libraries. And then an MVC kind of idea is just to have projects in a group. And this is what we see our large customers do already. So they have like a platform team that just maintains this separate project within the group that has all of their templates, and templates have like readmes and descriptions and whatnot. And then they write custom scripts to enforce those templates across their project. So this is what the compliance pipelines feature is solving for, kind of. But where we are right now, we don't have any mockups. Just in this milestone, our goal is to get a better understanding into what the workflow should look like. So we want to first have some more data points into what specifically workflows and what is the team structure and so on, and what are the different permissions that the users need from different teams, and document that, and then that will inform the user flow that we will create and create visionary mockups for, probably towards the middle of now we're in 14, so middle of 14.1 probably we'll have the mockups.
Okay. One question is that would it one thing that's not clear to me is that are these templates about a single job, or are these more an include that span multiple jobs? So is it the workflow or sub workflow, or it's a job?
So there are two answers for that. One, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if it's a job or a whole template. The user experience should be the same. Right now, what we've seen is that most, but users that we've interviewed, they are just doing the include for the whole thing. So it's not something that they slip in as a subset of specific jobs. But my answer for that, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, the vision is that when someone will create a template, they will need to specify if it's a job template, a step template, a whole pipeline. And so it will be easier for our user to consume. But then the way the interaction or the user experience will be the same. So user will say, okay, this is a job template. I can slit it into my pipeline, or no, this is the whole thing. So I need to take the whole thing and then maybe update it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
At least for when we deal with just YAML. So if you just copy code, if we start to put some abstraction on it, then maybe there will be some slight difference, you will be able to pick between pipeline templates or job templates, and pipeline template, maybe there will be slightly different options, because the use case is different for a whole pipeline template and for a job template that you would just insert into your pipeline. But that's the details. All in all, yeah, more or less the same.
Yeah, and right now, actually, we don't really support a job template. It's just you just do an include, and you can override jobs with your pipeline, and this is kind of a job template, but we don't really have a real solution for that yet. Something that we do plan probably to have, but before that we need to have we need to build the experience around that, and then it doesn't matter if we'll use there are multiple ways on how you can use a job template. One idea is maybe just use a parent-child pipeline, for instance, and have a job as a child. So it doesn't really matter how. And again, maybe we'll introduce something new. But first, before that, we need to solve the general user experience and build the framework to support that. And then different nuance, it's jobs, we support this and that. It's a pipeline, we won't support other features, but it's further down the road.
When you described it first, my first idea was the job would be the extend keyword that we have today, but then you still have to have something that you extend, and then that has to be added there. Yeah. Okay. I mean,
users are kind of abusing it and doing that in a way. So if we really need to have something, we can do that. It will not be an ideal, but if we need to do a POC, we can definitely do that.
Yeah. Now I understand what you say. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. So I think here it's really mostly about this template library than this is about, and then the idea is that template library, if they go with they select the workflow type, and then they get a wizard around that. I don't know if that's your idea to provide wizards around the template library, or it would just give you the code of that template into your CI, into your own YAML?
So it depends. So we can kind of like when you set up CI right now, you go to the editor and there's this drop down with templates. It's just really poor experience, but it could be made much better. But the idea is kind of the same. So you can just kind of pick a workflow based on your project type or your goal, whatever you're doing. But here, we're talking more about like a form where you would just answer certain questions like what is your deployment target and whatnot, and then we would just give them the workflow. So not really selecting from templates, but we could also go with the templates, or it could also be like a mixture of both, like some things we ask for input and then maybe they need to select the workflow, and we use those inputs to set up that specific workflow. That's probably the easier way. So maybe that would be like the first step, and then it might evolve into something a bit more abstracted. Or maybe not, maybe it's not necessary even.
Yeah, okay, that was my idea as well. That's okay. I think that's what the step is about, so there isn't much to be added. Here, then the question is that do we need a separate YAML that describes Auto DevOps, or we don't need that? Because the only thing when it came up that we might need something is if we use this post-stage jobs for the deployment. Because otherwise it's not needed at all.
It's hard to answer for me, I would say. Maybe yes, maybe no. I mean, we can generate that in case the users would like to update it, and then we can include that in the GitLab YAML file, for instance. But it's hard to tell. Like maybe it makes more sense to just incorporate it with the regular pipeline file.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well about that. It's really like there are variables set up, but variables are supporting the pipeline file. So there's why couldn't we use a regular pipeline there?
I don't know.
Might be a child pipeline, but
yeah, it's an open question for me because I mean, you can do that. I mean, you can override your variables with, but it needs to live on the general file. Yeah. I mean, maybe not.
I don't see a reason for this actually.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's just add this with a different color.
So will the Auto DevOps template or the Auto DevOps workflow just be included in the main CI YAML?
Yes, it might be. So it's like, the thing is that what Auto DevOps now means, it's really confusing, I think, because it could be like what it means today is your single pipeline that just does everything for you. What we are speaking about right now is that Auto DevOps would be more like a compliance pipeline that's run in your post stage. And that could be a child pipeline as well. So it can be a pretty big pipeline in itself, but it's included in your main pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we are speaking about actually.
Okay.
I'm thinking if the current limitations, so it's like, because the current limitation of Auto DevOps, the biggest one is that it's very brittle. It's totally unversioned. When we upgrade things might break for our users. And this is in large part a consequence of our YAML templating, like the includes cannot be versioned, etc. On the other hand, if we generate the YAML dynamically, then basically the Docker image that generates this YAML can be versioned, and then we actually overcome this problem.
I mean, regardless, our vision on templating is to have the ability to like tag a version on a template. So.
Anyway, until now, it doesn't seem that we want to change actually anything except of adding a wizard before all of it. Okay, where does it follow here?
Yeah, so this step is only relevant if we say that, okay, we will actually require some customization in the editor afterwards.
Yeah, but I think we shouldn't
the rest
require.
of the tabs, yeah, but the rest of the tabs should, I think, the rest of the tabs should work. Like visualize and even like I don't see any reason why users won't be able to view the YAML. Not update it, that's okay, but if they want to see like what's under the hood, they can
Yeah,
go.
that's clearly. Yeah, actually, that's something that we even discussed with Mikhail, that even if we would use a DSL, well, the kind of nice things with the DSL is that it can just generate you the YAML without running it, and so you can visualize it, you can test it, you can even, because it's a bit more dynamic, you can even run tests against your generation of the YAML. So definitely we should be able to visualize even that post part of it or the whole together. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, what you said, Nadia, I think we shouldn't require editing. So it should, once this basic pipeline is set up, it should work in terms of running green. It might not do what the user wants altogether, but it should be kind of it should be a successful experience for the user. I can tell you my own experience when I tried out DigitalOcean apps. Is it that I had a Docker file and it just deployed, and I knew that what it deploys is not what I actually want, because I need 2 services, and it could do it automatically only for 1 service. But I was already kind of delighted that, yeah, I did it in 2 minutes. It was great, nice experience. And after that, I know that in my special case, I have to edit manually the configuration YAML in order to define the second service there.
Yeah, that makes sense. But do we need to provide some kind of path from there to do that customization? Because it has to be somehow discoverable that, okay, it's great, now it's running, you should be able to see the value right away and to see what is working. And then there should be some kind of way for you to move on and extend it if you need to. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a step, like a step in the wizard, or, we can just end it once we can demonstrate some value that, hey, this workflow is working amazing. But then there should still be some way to move on. I don't know. I have no idea how that would work.
It should be in code. It should be in code. So, and it should be stored in the repository, what we generate. As a result, the user should be able to customize it probably in the pipeline editor or in the web ID even. But how much we have to support that, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's okay, at least at first, to just, like we can document it that, hey, if you want to customize it further, you can go ahead and edit that file, but in the UI, we don't necessarily have to guide them there. And which can also be a good thing if we can demonstrate considerable value with just what works by default. As you said, the same thing with DigitalOcean. I also use them. It was a really great experience. Like for someone who's not very technical, it was just so easy.
Yeah.
I question, like when you say user editing the Auto DevOps workflow, it means that they are customizing the Auto DevOps, but it still like works as Auto DevOps. And unlike today, the minute you touch the file, it's no longer Auto DevOps, it's a regular CI, right? Like what you're saying is update it, but continue to run like.
Yeah, that's why I would say that Auto DevOps is really a hidden. It's just this automation. It's just this that we provide you the form, and we set up something for you that that is much more than that form would provide. And after that, you get the code, you get all the configuration, and you can change it manually if you want.
Okay.
That would be my take on it.
And do you think users would like maybe to have a way for them to take control and own it like fully manually? Which means like copy the Auto DevOps to GitLab CI YAML file and then take it from there.
I think they do, actually. The thing is that that's why it's very tricky to say what Auto DevOps is, because what I see when I'm interviewing users around deployments is that everybody has their own way of doing deployments, and it's just, we can say that we can automate the first step, like deploying to the development cluster, which could be that they just use Helm for that with some almost no restrictions, but we cannot make the same automation for a staging environment already. Because in staging, they have guardrails all around that. They want to have very strict on what linters will run, what policies should be satisfied, and we don't support policies at all. So that's when it becomes tricky. And actually using Helm doesn't scale well, even though our users know Helm and don't know any other tools. So that's why I would say that we definitely have to enable our users to take control of the Auto DevOps pipeline.
Yeah, the way I envision it is that like at the beginning, like probably a lot of our users will take control over like the Auto DevOps. Okay, it's working as you mentioned for development, but now in the real world, I need to, I don't know, do my own stuff. So I'll take control on that. But then like as we improve Auto DevOps, there will be like less and less users that want to do it because they'll say, okay, it's working. And we need to make sure we invest the right time on like solving the problem for like, I don't know if it will be like the majority of the users, but like to extend our reach to as much users as possible. But there will always be those users that will say, okay, I want to run my own. So maybe it needs to be like the first thing that we need to give them is give them the controller. We need to make sure that Auto DevOps runs smoothly, at least from one very common use case. But then again, the minute they hit like the escape button, they can now take control, fully own it, and run it as their own.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, if they need to change it, then they can. So, but this is not a required step. That's the only.
Yeah, these are the steps that are not really necessary if we're talking about just setting up this workflow. It works. If they want to customize it further, they can go and work with the files using just a normal GitLab workflow.
Yeah, here's the same. And then they just, okay, watch the pipeline, or Oh, yeah, this is the existing things. Yeah, and here we have this idea. And this is not even accurate here. Like,
Yeah, feel free to just remove it. We already discussed these like at previous steps.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, so basically what I see is that what we are mostly discussing is this dashboarding thing, the how to inject deployment jobs, and then how to keep a single pipeline all the time, which is, I wouldn't say there are any huge novelties here. What do you think?
Yeah, it kind of seems like in terms of user experience, we're kind of making Auto DevOps work with the current experience that we're creating for pipeline authoring as a whole. So we need to have this one framework for presenting pipelines in GitLab and how you work with those pipelines, how you set them up, and how you can see them run, and so on and so forth. So this user flow that we went through, it seems like it solves for that. And regarding the sketch for the project, like project automation dashboard, so this is kind of like a long-term vision, or like a blue sky vision for what the pipeline editor or this pipeline dashboard would look like. So now it's the editor, but then eventually once we start putting some more abstraction on it, and we would have the UI where you can click on buttons to create those pipelines, then it becomes kind of like the visual builder that we've been talking about for a while now and imagining. But as an MVC, basically, it would just mean using what we currently have in the pipeline editor and making it work for an Auto DevOps pipeline.
Yeah. Okay. I think, yeah, it's like that isn't, yeah. I think we are done. I mean, it's for some time I had that impression that there won't be a huge novel outcome of this design sprint, more like kind of figuring out what we actually do and how we do that, which happens, but yeah.
I also think that maybe it's okay, because for us to maybe move on and create something more novel, we kind of have to make the current solutions work together, because then the more we start building them out separately, the more they will diverge and will be more difficult to proceed. So I think it's great that we're aligning now on the experience, and you know, we can run another design sprint to create something mind-boggling that everyone will just freak out about.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you have anything else to discuss right here.
I don't have anything, but like, what are the next steps?
That's a very good question. For multiple reasons. Like, what I see now is that what we described is in large part what you are working on this milestone as part of the template library.
Mm-hmm.
Second, Maria is mostly PTO for the rest of the year, so we don't really have a designer to design anything here. Third, I already mentioned this to Dov before Design Sprint, that I think largely what we are discussing is related to your team actually. So I'm not even sure that we should kind of play around this area, because we might just mess up your plans and stuff like that. So I don't think that with the design sprint we have actionable things to do. So it's like I wouldn't start building these dashboards, not just because I don't have a designer, but even because it's not my territory. I'm not familiar at all there. I will definitely continue discussing the deployment aspect and how we can do, what we can do with this post stage, and so on. And I'm sure that we will reach out to you, Dov, especially with the Petri nets and the modeling of deployment workflows topic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I don't see next step for design sprint actually. I would say that that's what we could get to. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, it was perfect timing for this design sprint, because it's really going to inform the work that I'll be doing around the CI templates library, because we need to have this aligned user experience. So I think the next step for me will be to just make sure that I loop you in whatever insights that we find from the problem validation, customer interviews, and then keep you in the loop on the exploration that I'll be doing this visionary work, because I think I will definitely take some parts of this user flow that we've defined that is relevant to the templates library stuff. And once we have that vision defined more or less, and like a milestone from now, maybe we can start kind of tackling some small parts and some small problems. I don't know, because either way, taking this user flow, creating the design, and making this high fidelity design for this huge workflow might not be that useful either way, because we all know it's just all gonna fall apart as we learn more along the way. Like, it's gonna morph and change dramatically over time. So we can just take it step by step. Basically, for me, the insights generated and like the shared vision generated throughout this design sprint, that has been invaluable. Like, I learned so much, and I feel like we have aligned on the vision for GitLab automation, which is quite powerful.
Yeah. To me, really, that's one of the key learnings, and the other is that I see deployment as a very, very problematic thing right now at GitLab, and that's what I'm working mostly on. That what we might have to change in terms of the automation behind all of this and how it might affect things, and that's getting aligned here, I think, is important for us. Cool. Dov, anything from you?
No, I think, like, unfortunately, I wasn't able to participate in the design sprint, but it was super helpful for me, like this meeting. I think it will be very helpful for like other folks. So, just like have the same thoughts as Nadia. I think it's like making sure we are aligned and not treating like Auto DevOps as the stepbrother that nobody wants or something. But really like understand how we can make sure that the user experience should be basically the same is key for all of us, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Then thank you for your time and for your inputs.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you both. I will share the recording once it wasn't done processing this monster of a recording. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.